morning and warm welcome to all of you. Today we have Dr. SRIRAM PARASURAM taking us an exploration of the Swati TIRUNAL Kritis. He is being given vocal support by Ashok Balaji. Thank you.
Magari sari gari gari sani ri sani dani pa dani sari ri sari ga sa ri ga ma pa dani sari gari sani sari sani ri sani dani sani da pa ma pa ni dani sa dani pa dani ma pa dani ga ma pa dani ri ga ma pa dani sari ga ma pa dani chala me hela jaise ura Papa ja di maru dau Papa ja di maru dau magari sani sadi sani sada ni pada ni sadi ni sadi ga sari ga ma pa pa ja di maru dau ga magari sari gari di sani sari sani sadani pa dani sari ni sa ri ga maga ma da pa magari pa magari sa gari sani sadi ga ma pa pa ja di maru dau pa da ma pa maga ma pa gari sa ni da pa da ni sa ri sa pa ma pa da pa ni da ni pa sa ni da pa ni da ma pa da ni sa pa ri ga ma pa pa ja di maru dau sa sa za pa za da ni sa ni da pa ma ga ma da ma ri ga ma ga ri sa pa sa ni ri ga ma da ni ga ri sa ga ri ga ma ga ri sa ri sa ni sa da ni pa da ni sa ri ga ma ga ri sa ni da pa da ni da pa da pa ma ga ri sa ri ga ma pa da ni pa ga 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 thi maru udau jal mein yela aje se ura jal mein la jaise Namaskaram, Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. We started off today's presentation with the very famous Shankarabharana Madatala Varna of Maharaja Swati TIRUNAL. One can say that 200 years back, the Varna was the ruling compositional genre. 200 years back was also the hoary period of music and dance together. And hence, Maharaja Swati TIRUNAL, as he was the king, and he had a court, and he was such a gifted musician, among other things. Obvious that his court resonated with both music and regaled everybody with dance, because these were times before the advent of concerts and performances. These were times when almost all of music and dance happened within the darbar, the court. The king was also the main patron and the main reason why music and dance flourished. The patronage, the encouragement, the support that the king gave to music and dance is why we have inherited this wealth. So it is important to keep in mind that we owe it to the great kings who were great patrons of art that we sing and dance today. So Swati TIRUNAL himself has composed more than 25 varnas. Padavarnas, Tanavarnas, in all kinds of ragas. In Telugu, Manipravalam, Sanskrit, sometimes some varnas in 2-3 languages. We shall have to delve a little bit into a historical background to prepare you for, to grasp as to what is the extent to which Swati TIRUNAL, how great a person he was. Swati TIRUNAL was born into the royal family of Travancore on 16th April 1813. He was called Garbha Shriman because he was anointed the prince while in the womb of the mother itself. Because of the situation, family and heir and kingly situation, the Venad dynasty of the matrilineal royal family of Travancore. Some of you might know that Kerala, the familial society and hierarchy is matriarchal, and hence even the heirship went along lines of the mother. While in the womb itself, he was proclaimed king. He was born in the star of Swati Nakshatram. That's why you will find in the Travancore kings, they are all named after the star in which they were born. So Ashwati TIRUNAL, Swati TIRUNAL, and the naming of the king itself. He reigned under the regency of his mother from 1813 to 1815, and then under the regency of his maternal aunt, Gauri Parvati Bai, until 1829. He was declared the king when he reached majority age at 16 and assumed full powers of rulership and reigned as the Maharaja of Travancore until his death in 1846. He lived a very full life of 33 years. And what amazes sometimes is how much he achieved in these 33 years. What even a very gifted musician and intellectual and linguist and mathematician and administrator can achieve over probably 3-4 centuries. And his life was so packed. Sometimes I wonder if he had any free time to go on a break or take a vacation or anything like that. Because kings are supposed to do that, right? Kings go, even today's kings, today's whatever so-called presidents and, so the American president will go to Martha's vineyard and, chill with his family for a week and stuff like that. But I think, and the kings also used to have separate mahals and havelis and places where they used to go and just relax and do hunting. But all that was not at all relevant to Swati TIRUNAL. It's very difficult to even begin to imagine how much he achieved in this short span of 33 years. If you cut away the initial 4-5 years, even for a very gifted genius, we are talking about a productive life of about 25 to 28 years. Of course, his family made sure that they sensed that this was a very gifted child, not just a king to be, but a scholar and a musician and a composer and an administrator and a mathematician and a reformer who brought out so much of change for his people. So that's why his childhood was filled with learning. The young prince studied several languages: Malayalam, Kannada, Tamil, Hindi, Telugu, Marathi, Sanskrit, English and Persian. Not only this, he studied all subjects: science, mathematics, geometry. In fact, one of the colonels of the British Raj at that time, Colonel Welsh, summed up the boy king's genius in mathematics as: Swati TIRUNAL, now 13, took up a book of mathematics and selecting the 47th proposition of Euclid. The Euclidean geometry is what we study today also. And sketched a figure on a country slate of hexagons, heptagons and their relationships, and astonished by telling us that in English, even the word geometry, words like hexagon, heptagon, etc., were all derived from Sanskrit. So his very deep knowledge of Sanskrit, linguistics, etymology and geometry. Geometry was the word given to measure shapes, objects including shape of the earth. Geometry. Adithan nama geometry later on. Many of our mathematical terms he is decoded as being linked to earlier geometrical concepts. If you study Vedic mathematics, you'll discover this. That a lot of the things which we take for granted as invented and come about in Western civilizations actually has traveled from here. So there's a lot of family upheavals, loss of lives, dealing with the British, betrayal by the colonels and all the ruling fraternity of the British. But in spite of that, he's said to have been an impeccable administrator, an impeccable Raja for his Praja. There are so many accounts of it. When I took up this topic, I take up topics so that I can learn a little bit more. So when I took up this topic, I got a sense of, through writings and through articles and documents published at that time, as to how highly regarded he was even by his British rulers. I use these words in a very casual term. I don't like the word British ruler, but that's what some of the documents and essays describe the occupational bosses as. He set up free schools, he set up government colleges, universities for the first time in this small village in Kerala. And he also conducted the first census of the state in 1836. At the time, the population of Travancore was 1,28,068. Yeah, that is the population of Nariyark in terms of his fascinating history. But to an extent, we will focus a little more on the compositions. The greatness and the magnificence of any composer is very inextricably linked to his life. Any artist, the work of any artist grows in its stature and grows in how beautiful it is only when seen in the context of the person's life. Whether it be Mozart, or whether it be Vincent van Gogh, or whether it be Swati TIRUNAL or Tyagaraja or Muthuswami Dikshitar, Dikshitar's composition come alive because you know that he was a Parivrajaka. He traversed the length and breadth of the country by foot and by bullock cart. And each temple he visited, he composed on that deity, on that sthala, taking into account all the elements of the Tala Purana, the history, the iconography, everything. So then a kriti like Ananda Natna Prakasham comes alive more in our sensibilities because you know the context. You know Chidambaram, you know. So it is not just a musical piece or a literary piece of Sahitya. It is culture in one nutshell. You know. So that is why if you really want to relish a Swati TIRUNAL composition or any composer's work, you can take a little bit time out and read a little bit about their history, their journey, their struggles, Tyagaraja's struggles, Tyagaraja's philosophical struggles, his familial struggles. All of them get reflected in his compositions. So the composition, for you, it becomes more and more precious. சும்மா பாட்டு கேட்டு ரசித்து கை தட்டிட்டு போகிறது அது பண்ணலாம். பட் அதை தாண்டி ஒரு ரசிகா வந்து அதை பற்றி தெரிஞ்சுக்கிற ஒரு இனிஷியேட்டிவ் இருந்தால் இன்னும் ரிவார்டிங்காக இருக்கும். Swati TIRUNAL showed a very deep interest in music. His uncle, his grandfather, all of them were very musically grounded, trained musically. So King, you know, he had gurus and teachers all over the, I can just imagine, paint a picture in your mind. You know, ஒரு குரு வந்து சொல்லிக் கொடுப்பார் சான்ஸ்கிரிட்டு, அவர் போன உடனே வேறு குரு வருவார் மேத்தமேட்டிக்ஸ் சொல்லிக் கொடுக்குறதுக்கு, தென் சயின்ஸ் டீச்சர் வருவா. அப்புறம் அவருக்கு வெளியில் போய் விளையாடுறதுக்கு டைம் கூட இருந்தா தெரியாது சின்ன வயசில். You know, so packed his schedule would have been. Any other child would have protested. Correct? But his genius in music was sensed by the royal family very early. And hence, I searched for the information as to when he first composed. I couldn't get that. So probably that detail is lost to us. But he composed more than the Swati TIRUNAL government, Kerala state website, Sangeet Natak Academy website, lists 488 compositions of his. And these include Tanavarnams, Padavarnams, Swarajatis, Jatiswaram, Kirtanas, Kritis, Padams, Tillana, Javali, Ragamalikas, group Kritis, North Indian forms like Drupad, Khayal, Tappas, etc. So his basket of compositions is probably the most versatile. among all composers. Navaratri Kritis, Navaratna Malika, Navavida Bhakti, Ghanaraga Kirtanas, Utsava Sampradaya Kritis. Of course, we are familiar with his mudras, which is Swati Tirunal mudra, in praise of his deity, which is Ananta Padmanabha Swami. Padmanabha, Pankajanabha, Sarasijanabha, Sororuhanabha, Jalajanabha, Kanchananabha. Padmanabha is the most frequently used, mostly in Sanskrit. His compositions are. But we will also see how his mastery of all idioms of literature, including that of Sringara in his padas and in his javalis, you will see that he was a master of all the languages. To compose a kriti doesn't mean that you just know the language, the syntax and the vocab, etc. You have to get intimate with it. Appada the kritiya sahityama nukkum. So just by knowing some words and syntax of Tamil or something, I cannot sit and compose a kriti. Only I will be singing it. Lyrics are highly poetic. The content of prosody and literature and all of them is very rich. I am not a language expert. But even for me, his kritis speak of beauty and depth, which is not even tangible. It's beyond just a craft. The similes, metaphors, alliterations, the sounding of the sahitya. Sahitya is not just meaning in the context of music. Sahitya has more to do with sound than with meaning. Language ku rendu aspects undu. One is sound and one is meaning. That's why we continue to sing Tyagaraja Kritis without even having a shred of knowledge of what it means. That's why nariya wrongave paadrom. Correcta? Ipothu konjam tirthin vandundirukom because we have resources. But even if you listen to some stalwarts of yesteryears, now if you look to the correct versions, you'll say there are very grave mistakes in the Sahitya. But we continue to sing them because the sound is so musical. Sound of a word, sound of a language is music when deployed properly. So I will demonstrate it with Bhavayami Raghuramam, how unnum puriyatalum Sanskritam puriyatalum eppadi jililililil and the varthagal resonate are the musical. Flow of Sahitya, smooth, graceful, both in slow and fast. என்ன கால பிரமாணம்ல பாடுறோமோ அந்த சாகித்யம் அதுக்கு இடம் கொடுக்கணும். It should continue to be beautiful in the kala pramana that kriti is imagined. We will also see as to how he was a master of prasa and poetics. In fact, he has written a treatise in it on just the poetics of Sanskrit language. So the 1760s to 1850s was a very special golden period in Carnatic music, correct? On the banks of the Kaveri, we had the three masters, Tyagaraja, Shyama Shastri and Muthuswami Dikshitar. Towards the end of the period, around 1820s, 1830s, we come to the banks of the Karamana river, which flows through Thiruvananthapuram, and we have Swati Tirunal there. Swati Tirunal Ramavarma. In fact, his full name is very interesting. I will just share that with you. Just a minute. His Highness Sri Padmanabha Dasa Vanchipala Sri Ramavarma Kulasekhara Kiritapati Manne Sultan Maharaja Raja Ramaraja Bahadur Shamsher Jung Maharaja of Travancore Swati Tirunal. That's his whole name. Because these names are given to you. He is also called Sultan. Shamsher Jung, again vandado theriyala. But adum irukku. So we shall go through some of the genres. All of you are very familiar with some of the Swati Tirunal kritis, which credit has to be given to in recent times to two people. One is Muttaya Bhagavatar and the next is Sri Samangudi Srinivasa Iyer, who took it upon as a mission to spread and propagate these kritis. Not that others didn't contribute, but these were the two in the 20th century when performances came alive and a bigger cross-section of people started taking in the beauty of these kritis. I think we have to put on record the contribution of Samangudi Srinivasa and Muttaya Bhagavatar earlier. Muttaya Bhagavatar was, both of them did so at the behest of the Maharani. Maharani கூப்பிட்டு தான் Samangudi Srinivasa Iyer and my guru, Sangeeta Kalanidhi Veena K.S. Narayana Swami. They sat down and brought out a volume of about 180 compositions with Sahitya and Swarapadti notation. Abdi ava release panna. That was one of the earliest tangible works, usable works for musicians and rasikas. 1856 there is a record of Swati TIRUNAL bringing out the first ever publication of a book with notation. Nobody has been able to trace it. The next evidence we have is of 1927. Balamritamnu ஒரு bookல about 120 of his compositions are said to have been notated, because by this time, by 1907, after Chinnaswamy Mudaliyar and the Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini, the idea of notating kriti and fixing the met had come about. Swati TIRUNAL's legacy had a very big vacuum for about 100 years. Because he being a king, he never developed a Shishya Parampara. He had no Shishyas. He had many, many tens and about 50, 60 musicians adorning his court. But he didn't have any Shishya that we know of. Adinala, though the Sahitya and the text of the compositions were recorded, the actual tunes were almost lost. This many people will not accept, but that is a fact of history. There were only fragments of it here and there. In fact, Prince Ramavarma accepts that it has all been lost. It's a tragedy. It's a tragic case of Swati TIRUNAL's composition. So it had to be reinvented. Piecing together, KSN Sir Solvar, Enodu Guru Solvar, because I was 15 and 16 when I was learning, and he was involved in the project in the 75s and the 70 period, 1970 period. So he used to say that how they had to bring about fragments from different people who have heard or who have heard their grandmother sing or grandfather sing and they have learnt it. But it's all very informal. Tyagaraja was a visionary. He developed his Shishya Paramparas along 4 lines. Correct? Because the idea of oral transmission is fraught with the idea that there will be loss. So he made sure that at least 1 or 2 of these will survive. And that's how we have inherited the compositions of Tyagaraja. Muthuswami Dikshitar, by virtue of his family, Ambi Dikshitar and Subbarama Dikshitar later, who published the Sangeeta Sampradaya Pradarshini, we got about 250 compositions of Muthuswami Dikshitar. But Swati TIRUNAL, because the family fell into ruin afterwards, the whole kingly structure got fragmented and disappeared because of the politics of that time. There was nobody to carry forward his music. There were some singers in the neighboring princely states also who took it up. But then that never got documented. So it is a fact. I don't know, some of you might remember the controversy of Veena Balachandar about maybe 30, 40 years back, where he just openly declared in his own style that these are not authentic at all, what we are singing today. To an extent, yes, we have to face the reality. He may have been a greatest, nobody denies the fact that he was a great composer, because there have been records of his compositions being sung and being appreciated, the depth of them and all that. But we don't have the versions, except the reinvented ones. So one has to accept that many of the versions that we sing of Deva Deva or Sara Saksha Paripale are all Semangudi Mama's versions. They have been reinvented with fragments here and there. Correct? That doesn't diminish Swati TIRUNAL's value. Anyway, so, since I mentioned Deva Deva Kalayami, it's Deva Deva Kalayami Te Charanambuja. It's not Deva Deva Kalayami Te. நிறைய பேர் அப்படி தான் பாடுறா. ஆனாலும் ஒரு ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டி கிடைச்சா நம்ம கரெக்ட் பண்ணிக்கலாமே. நானும் அப்படி தான் கற்றுண்டேன். தேவ தேவ கலையாமிதே. கொஞ்சம் மயமாளுகள் பாடு. பாடு. Deva Deva Kalayami, Deva Deva Kalayami Te Charanambuja Sevanam, Deva Deva Kalayami Te Charanam Bhuja Sevanam, Deva Deva Kalayami Te Charanam Bhuja Sevanam, Deva Deva Kalayami Te Charanam Bhuja Sevanam, Deva Deva Kalayami. When I listen to this composition as I learnt it, I can hear Semangudi Mama's music. In terms of choice of the range of the composition, the Sankatis. Bhuvanatrayanayaka Bhuri Karuna Yamama Bhavatapamakilam Varaya Ramakantam Deva Deva. Close your eyes. I will recreate the sound of Semangudi Mama for you. Bhuvanatrayanayaka Bhuri. I'm not imitating or anything. I'm just saying how beautifully a lyric, a sahitya of Swati TIRUNAL has been reinvented for our musical pleasure, enjoy. தப்பே இல்லையா அதில் பண்ணர்லையா நம்ம புரந்தரதாசாலாம் என்ன tunes தெரியும்? We don't know. We don't know the tunes of Jayadeva. We don't know the tunes of so many great composers. தேவாரம் tunes தெரியுமா? திருப்புகழ் tunes தெரியுமா? ஒன்றும் தெரியாது. But then it is so beautiful. The words themselves suggest the met. Correct? Bhuvanatrayanayaka Bhuri Karuna Yamama Bhavatapamakhila Varaya Ramakanta Devadeva Kalayami Te Charanamuja Sevanam Devadeva Jatarupa Nibhachela Janmarchita Mamakila Pataka Sanchaya Miha Varaya Karunaya Tidijali Vidalana Tidijali Vidalana Tina Bandoma Mava Srita Vibhuta Sala Sri Padmanabha Saure Deva Deva. So, what I very honestly feel, the cast of this song has been cast in the mold of a Tyagaraja Kriti. Though the books, the ancient records of 1850 say that Swati TIRUNAL composed in the style of one great musician called Margadarshi Sheshayangar. But the way I look at it, the current form of this composition is very familiar to us. It is not radically different or anything. We do not know if Swati TIRUNAL, there is no record of him having learnt compositions of Muthuswami Dikshitar and Tyagaraja. He has learnt a paddhati of Carnatic music which was bordering that of what we might call today folk, Sopanam Sangeetam. And the tradition la avaroda learning irundirukum, because geographically there was isolation, and in 33 he was doing 101 things. So it is highly unlikely that he travelled to Telugu land or got familiar and learnt compositions of Dikshitar. Even his use of the Samskrita language differs very much from that of Dikshitar. That is something which even a novice like me can make out. So definitely the influence of Dikshitar and Tyagaraja may not have been very great, is what I am inferring. But in the Kriti keta namakku romba familiar ah irukra mari irukku, correct ah? Mata Kritis kekra mari irukku. So that is what leads also me. Most of his compositions are set like that, either by Muttiya Bhagavatar or some musicians who came later, or by K.S. Narayanaswamy, or by Semmangudi Srinivasa. And in today's times by later inheritors of the legacy like Ramavarma and all those people. Nayatinkara Vasudevan. These are people who, the lyrics were there, fragments of an imagination were there, and they set it in. This is the objective way of looking at it. The role of M.S. Subbulakshmi also is very critical in when we talk about the propagation of Swati TIRUNAL Kritis, because having learnt these from her guru, Semmangudi Mama, she really popularized many of these compositions. A Kripaya Palayellam, M.S. Amma Padidan, Illarme Ketirkom. Correct? So, our eppadi and the met potar namakinnum, there is no way of knowing, unless, like I say, he comes in your dream and teaches you the song. Even then, that dream is going to be a figment of whatever musicality of yours. Correct? Our dreams are always things which we have already experienced. You know, that is what spiritual masters say. It cannot be of things which you have never experienced. In some way or the other you should have. So, nammalukku dream la avar vandu solli kuduthana namakku therinja alavukku da musicality adula nama and we can dream of it. Anyway, that's a slightly different topic in terms of na 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 tada na na tada na 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 ra ra na 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 kripaya palaya shaure. The middle octave beginning. Adamodi galade ramaya matalada. So definitely this imagination of Charukesi is a modern imagination. It will be too much of a coincidence to think that separately and individually and uniquely Swati TIRUNAL thought of this met. You know, I'm just being objective here. The probability of that is 1 in a million. That both Tyagaraja and Swati TIRUNAL thought of Charukesi as Pamagari as the opening statement. Correct. Nariya kritis irukku paadinde irukla. But I want to also, there's one important thing which I think I will spend a little time demonstrating. He composed about 40 compositions in the Hindustani tradition. I will speak about, I don't remember the names, but he was a king, he had unlimited resources. So he used to invite musicians from all over the country. Banaras, Jalandhar, there are records of this. Banaras, Jalandhar, Dwaraka, Maharashtra, Orissa, ella edathilendum sarangi players, vocalists, dancers, musicologists, ellam music scholars, ellam varuvala, language teachers, poets. So what a vibrant court that would have been, you know. And of course his grasp should have been very, very exceptional, that he could grasp all these elements. So his compositions in Drupad and bandishes, you know, the typical khayal bandishes, have also been lost. In modern times, the words are there. Many of the compositions are in what is called a 4-part structure of Drupad. But many musicians in recent times, including Pandit Jasraj, Pandit Ajoy Chakravarti, Pandit Jitendra Abhisheki, they have adopted and tuned the compositions in a khayal form. Correct? So அந்த வகையில் நான் ஒரு 7-8 காம்போசிஷன் அவரோட எடுத்து டியூன் பண்ணியிருக்கேன், like a bandish. So அதில் I'll sing 1 or 2 for you now. Of course the language is Hindi, but Hindi suffused with a lot of Sanskrita. When in the realm of spiritual text, even in Hindi, unless it is a pure bhakti of Meera or something, a classical composition will always have a base in Sanskrit. Jana Jana Jai Jai Devi Jai Jaga Janani 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 Jai Jai Devi. Jai Jai Janani. This is a raga called Jog. Jai 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 Devi Jai Jaga Janani Jai Tribhuvan Sukhadai Bhavani Jai Jai Devi Jai Jaga Janani Jai Tribhuvan Sukhadai Bhavani Jai Jai Devi Jai Jaga Janani Jai Tribhuvan Sukhadai Bhavani Dada Devi Jai Jagajanani Tero hi maya ananta apara Tero hi maya ananta apara Nyara jaku koi nahi pai Nyara jaku koi nahi pai Padmanabha Prabhu Sevak ke man bhai Jai Jai Devi Jai Jagajanani. The sensibility of composition also bends to that of the Hindi bandish. How does he bring Padmanabha? He is singing, many of his compositions are on the goddess, correct? If you say Mama Sada Janani, Mama Sada Varade, the Navaratri Kritis are all in praise of the goddess. But he has to bring in his mudra in a meaningful way. So, inge enna solrarna Padmanabha Prabhu Sevak ke man bhai. The Sevakas of Padmanabha, who are worshippers of Padmanabha, their mind she pleases. Manabhana means to please the mind. And the Sevakas oda mind, he brings in Padmanabha very differently when speaking, when in his kritis. That is in the context of the relationship between the Shaivite and Vaishnavite traditions. But here it is in a very casual and rumba iyalba varudhu in the connection. The beauty of the sounding of the compositions, of his lyrics, you know, this is something which some of you might have realized. A sounding of a poem or a kriti becomes musically very pleasing when it is suffused with vowels. Both Samskrita and Malayalam allow very effortlessly for that. Tamil is not so easy to compose in terms of the sounding of the language. That's why even today when we tune a Tevaram or even a Bharatiyar composition, it is tough because to make it sound beautiful, meaning romba azhama irukum. And recitation la and the veeram and the kind of consonant power irukum. But paarathukku consonant power is not such a good thing. Vowel power, the power of the vowel, you know. So if you take a kriti like Bhavayami Raghuramam, I marvel at his dirgha vowel usage, whether it be ikara, akara, ukara, okara. Adinalana and the kriti romba kekradhukku romba saukhyama irukku. I'll just demonstrate that also. Then we'll go to, because these are all aspects of composition that one has to be alive to. Because I'm dealing with a lot of compositions, I have to refer to some sahitya. Bhavayami. Todakatliye a mi. Raghuramam Bhavya Sugunaramam Bhavayami. I said in a lecture at Music Academy that the most beautiful word that Tyagaraja ever used in his composition was the word Rama. Because the rendu dirgha a Rama, right? Adhadan the kritigal kekkaradhukke romba azhaga irukku. Othupela. Krishna and the azhaga irukadu. Because it is kr and shna. Conjunct consonants are very unmusical. To make it musical is, then we will use word like Bala Gopala, words for Krishna Govinda. These are all words which have more of vowels. You understand? So, nama kriti kette sahityam rasikum bodhu, and the craft of the poet in terms of how to use the words in a musical way. That's why it is not the same as writing a poem. Anyway. Bhavuka vitarana para pangalila lasitam. This closed ma and na are also very musical. Dikshitar's Samskrita uses a lot of the Ibo Ananda Natana Prakasham ஸோ இந்த மக்காரால நான் வந்து அவ்வளவு ராகா அதுக்குள்ள போட முடியும். பிரகாசம் அவ்வளோ கேதாரம் அந்த மக்காராக்குள்ள நுழைக்கலான்னா. ஸோ இந்த லாங்குவேஜ் அண்ட் ராகம் சேர்ந்து வரதான் மேஜிக் ஆஃப் நம்ம சங்கீதம். கரெக்டா? யூனோ, ஸோ அதே மாதிரி ஹிஸ் uncanny sense of using vowels and makara and nakara. For your kind information, this is in the records. Bhavyami Raghuramam is composed entirely in Saveri. It is Samangudi Mama's beautiful mischief that he felt it was too long to be rendered in one raga, and then he composed it in, he set it in different ragas. Now it is such a epitome of a composition. Raga Malikana, one of the first compositions that come to mind is Bhavayami Raghuram. There's no doubt about it, correct? At the end of it, Chittaswaram Potadum, Swati Tirunal illa. It is a drawing from Mahavaidyanatha year's Ragamalika by Samangudi. After every charana, you have a very compact Chittaswara. And in Rendu Kalam, this is the offshoot of நம்ம கல்பனா ஸ்வரால போடுற அந்த மனோதர்ம அங்கத்தோடு reflection in a composition. See, many of the Chittaswaras and Swara Sahitya, Swarajatis of Shyama Shastri, we might choose to sing in two speeds. But that is our choice. It was not sung that way. Even now, some masters will claim that you should not sing ஒரு ஜனனி நின்னு வினாவோ ஒரு சுப்பராய சாஸ்திரி கிருத்தியில் அந்த இந்த இது வரும் இல்லையா, ஸ்வரம் சிட்டஸ்வரம் ஸ்வரம் அண்ட் சாகித்யா வில் கம், ரெண்டாம் காலத்தில் பாடப்படாது சொல்லுவாள். Even my guru used to say. But நம்ம பாடுறோம் because it is thrilling. So it is a performative aspect. But here it has been embedded as a compositional aspect by Samangudi Mama. This is the musicality that the composition has accomplished for itself. Right? You are familiar with what I am saying, correct? Dinakaranvayatilakam Divyaugadi Sudasavana Vanarachita Subahumukha Vadanam Mahalya Pavanam Anagamisha Sapapangam Janakasudha Pranesham Ghanakupita Brigurama Garvaharamita Saketam Magasanida Nisarigama Nidama Garigama Pagarisa Nida Nisarigama Nida Nivada Nisarigama Nida Nida Magamani Nida Nida Nisa Rigama Nida Nivada Nisa Nida Nisa Rigama Risada Risada Sada Nida Maga Risada Bhava Yami Raghuramam. Even the idea of that coming back to Saveri within the Swara passage itself. Risada Risada Sada Nida Maga Risada Bhava Yami. Using the same which was used in the Anupalam, you know. Adhe mari, all the Dhanya Sila, Mohanatla, Ga, Pagari, Gari, Sada, Sadi, Ga, Pada, Sada, Pagari, Sadi, Ga, Pagari, Sadi, Gari, Sada, Sadi, Gari, Ga, Paga, Pada, Pada, Sadi, Sada, Risada, Sada, So this variation that now the Kriti possesses is a 20th century addition. Okay? Because there is no logical or examples of that time doing these kinds of things. And of course, end la the Madhyamavati paadi illa reverse la varudhu. Nama ipo Ragantanam Palvili Ragamaliki paadi reverse la paadrome. So those are all aspects of performance tradition which have been co-opted by the composition, or rather which have been embedded into the composition by somebody. Re ma pa ni pa ma pa ni sa re sa ni pa pa ma ma re pa ma ni sa re ma pa da pa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa ni da sa re ma ga da pa ga re sa re ga pa da sa re sa da pa ga re sa ni sa ma ga ma ni da ni sa ga re sa da da re ni da ma ga re sa da va ya mi. You see that the reverse thing also is a modern inclusion into the composition. But it is up to the Semangudi Mama's genius that he makes it sound as if it's a Vagayakara's creation. The Sahityam and the Met coming from one place. That is his Shraddha. That he has made it seem as if நம்மளும் நிறைய கம்போஸ் பண்ணுறோமே, கரெக்ட், இதுக்கு டியூன் போடுறோம், அதுக்கு டியூன் போடுறோம், 90% அது ஒட்ட மாட்டேங்கிறது. யூ கேன் மேக் அவுட் தட் திஸ் இஸ் பீன் டியூன்ட் பை சம்படி. இட் டசன்ட் ஹேவ் த ஹோல்சம்னஸ் of a musical composition coming from a Vagyakara. Correct? In fact, you can say this is tuned by Nedunuri. I don't mean any disrespect to all of them. But you can make out that this Bhadrachal Ramadasa composition has been set to tune by Balamurli or Nedunuri. I can easily make out that it is R.K. Srikantan's met for a Purandaradasa composition. Whereas there are many of Swati TIRUNAL's composition, you don't feel that fracture. It seems as if it is coming from one place. So we have to give credit to KSN sir and Semangudi sir. You know? The flow of Sahitya. So definitely, of course, we are not fortunate enough to have a sense of how Swati TIRUNAL would have sung this. Nowhere did I find a mention that Swati TIRUNAL sang these compositions. There is no mention of him singing. If anybody's, because I've looked at some 10-12 sources, accounts, historical accounts, the royal register, angeme avar paadina mari mention varle. So that is still, we still don't know whether he was strictly a composer or a composer singer. We know in the case of Shyama Shastri, Tyagaraja, that they sang their composition themselves. They taught it to their students. Unjavritti Bodhi, Tyagaraja sang his compositions. Muthuswami Dikshitar sang in front of the shrine, wherever deity he was, whichever temple he sang. Tyagaraja also, அவர் பாடும்போது அவரோட சிஷ்யாஸ் அதை எழுதி அப்படிதான் நமக்கு history tells us. ஸோ அவள் பாடினா. சுவாதி திருநாள் பாடினாரா ஒரு question mark தான். நமக்கு தெரியாது. From a historical point of view, we don't know. So இந்த கமகாஸ் எல்லாம் அவர் எப்படி போட்டிருப்பார், and the note, like I told you in the 1917 publication, which follows the method of Subbarama Dikshitar's notation, whether those notations are indeed how it was sung, because 100-year gap irukku. So those are all questions that a musicologist or a historian has to address. None of it take away from the glory of the compositions. Always remember, a question to truth never diminishes the beauty of the object in scrutiny. This is something which musicologists sometimes lose focus, because they feel they are letting down Swati TIRUNAL's legacy. And the Sunday adnal dane vandide Veene Balachandar and the world, because some people couldn't accept or couldn't fathom that these are not original. Carnatic music la adoru periya or bugbear. Ella original maradichikrom, but 90% of it is not. We are not singing Begada the way Tyagaraja sang it. What is the problem in accepting the reality? Give some credit to ourselves, give some credit to our gurus of the previous generation. Why do we have to keep harking to 250 years back and say, this is authentic? In any tradition, there is movement. It's not static. If you don't understand and grab and able to grasp the beauty of that, then I think there is loss. you are the loser. So அந்த சேஞ்ச் இருக்கு எல்லாத்துலேயுமே. அண்ட் ராக சங்கீதாவில் டெஃபினட்டாக சேஞ்ச் இருக்கு. நம்ம லைஃப் டைம்லேயே பார்க்குறோம். 20 வருஷம் முன்னால் எப்படி வித்வான் பாடினாரோ இப்போ எப்படி பாடுறாரோ, தேர் இஸ் ஹெவன் அண்ட் அர்த் டிஃபரன்ஸ். கரெக்ட். தட் இஸ் ஹியூமன் நேச்சர். டு சேஞ்ச் இஸ் ஹியூமன் நேச்சர். I also tuned one composition of Swati TIRUNAL in the raga Bihag. Why did I do it? There is evidence that the first composer to use the raga Bihag is Swati TIRUNAL. Kapi was used earlier by Tyagaraja in Inta Saukyam Manine. Even Dixter has used it. It is also a favorite raga for Swati TIRUNAL. In fact, there are 3 varnams in itself in Kapi. Sumasayaka ninga ketirupel. But Bihag vandu adukku minnala vandittle. So definitely, and that is mentioned by 2-3 scholars. So I decided to tune this one composition in Bihag. I chose not to have harmonium and tabla today because இந்த தபலா சேரத்துலேயே ரொம்ப டைம் ஆகும். நம்ம பேசும்போது அது சுதி கலையும், அதுக்கு ஒரு டொங் 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 தான் அடித்தது சேர்த்தணும். ஸோ மைட் அஸ் வெல். திஸ் இன் விலம்பித் ஏக் தால். விலம்பித் ஏக் தால் இஸ் நம்ம ரூபக தாலா into 4 in terms of the length. It is interesting to see that in Swati TIRUNAL Saramayana Matalento, this the main pakkad of Bihag, pa pa ga ma ga ni pa pa da ga ma ga sa ga ma pa ni ni sa ni pa sa ni pa ni ga ma pa ni sa ma ga pa da ma pa ri pa ga ma ga. This Pagamaga is a very important murchana. So in Saramaina Matalanta Chalu Chalu Ra. The crux of that first line is Saniga Maga. Ada crux. Na Jarana. Well, na na derena ritana na re na na ब्रिजा की छवि हर गई, ब्रिजा की छवि हर गई, जब से गयो कूंज हरित लता सब सूख गई, ब्रिज की छवि हर गई. ब्रिज की छवि हर गई. Chabi na beauty. The beauty image. Chabi means, chhab means beautiful image. So bridge की छवि हर गई. गयो जब से कुंज हरित लता सबे सूख गई. Ever since he left Brij Desa, ever since Krishna left Vrindavan, it has all dried up. Like the whole place is looking like dead, wilted creepers of jasmine, is what he's saying. ब्रिज की छवि हर गई, गयो जब से कुंज हरित लता सबे सूख गई. illa vaadi poyiduthu. Very beautiful. This is a sentiment and a language and a way of expressing Shringara, the way you will find in Meera. It's not like how he expresses in his Sanskrit compositions. So the assimilation of the aesthetic of language and its use in North India, he has grasped very, very beautifully. Udho hamaro sandesa madho se kahiyo. Uddhava, please take my message, take our message. Tell Madhava. Udho. Even the colloquial use of what is called Brij Bhasha. It's not Hindi, this is Brij Bhasha. It's a dialect of Hindi. Udho. It's not Uddhava. And Le Jaiyo Sandesa. This is also again a very common theme in the romanticism of Bandish. That is, there is a separation between the lover and the beloved, and there is a messenger who takes this message of Biraha, of the pain of separation. Usually this message is either a kite, patikava, patang, because it travels from one desa to another, correct? Or it is a kagwa. Kagwa means a crow, it flies. Or it is the megha, which is the clouds will go from here to there. So it conveys the sense of pain. In Swati TIRUNAL, I am finding a mirroring of that kind of treatment of language. Which means he would have been he would have encountered these musical examples or these literary examples of Bandish very deeply, very intimately. Udho hamaro sadesa madho se kahiyo. जय पद्मनाभ की कृपा तीनी लोक छाई, ब्रज की छवि हर गई. ஹிந்துஸ்தானியில் எப்படின்னா ஒரு வார்த்தையும் எலாபரேட் பண்ண முடியும். நம்ம நிரவல்ல பண்றது அந்த சாகித்ய லைனை எலாபரேட் பண்றோம். இங்க ஒரு வார்த்தையோட சௌக்கியம், அதோட ஆழம், அந்த சவுண்டோட அழகு, இந்த மீனிங்கோட டெப்த் எல்லாமே எலாபரேட் பண்ண முடியும். ब्रिज 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 की छवि हर गई, ब्रिज ब्रिज की छवि हर गई, ब्रिज की छवि हर गई. ब्रिज की छवि हर गई. 100 वाटी पाड़ना, on the listener the words will penetrate and you will just surrender to the feel of that. ब्रिज की छवि हर गई. Even if your Ishtadevata is Rama, for the time being your Ishtadev Krishna will become your Ishtadevata. Correct? That is the power of repetition. And in the ragathila adorn panni varudhu. Sometimes I was imagining about a week back when I started preparing, அவர் அதை கம்போஸ் பண்ணார். அது ஹிந்துஸ்தானின்னு அது கேட்டகரிஸ்லேயே இருக்குது, அந்த புக்லேயே இருக்குது. See, there is enough documentation of his work. The only documentation missing is the tunes. Correct? ஸோ அதான் அவர் பாடினப்போ இது எப்படி இருந்திருக்கும் நான் இமேஜின் பண்ணிட்டு இருந்தேன். பட் திஸ் 4-part structure, all the people who have tuned his compositions have selected phrases and lines from his composition. It's not the entire composition in Hindustani. I have heard 3-4 compositions of Ajoy Chakravarti. அது மாதிரி அந்த புக்கில் கொடுத்ததோடு ஒரு selected phrases தான் அந்த composition-குள்ளே வருது. Because the composition structure of a khayal bandish doesn't allow for so many words. Even the composition Vishveshwara Darshana Kar that we are all familiar with, actually composed not as a bhajan. It is composed as a Drupad piece according to his classification. So definitely நம்ம வந்து இப்போ அது ஒரு துக்கடா மாதிரி பாடுறோம், கரெக்டா? சிந்து பைரவியில் one author also mentions that Sindhu Bhairavi is also first used by Swati TIRUNAL. There's no reference before Swati TIRUNAL for Sindhu Bhairavi. Now it is such a beloved raga among Carnatic music rasikas, correct? Let us come back to something Carnatic and then we'll go back to he was also a master of dance. His dance compositions are still regarded as some of the most beloved, some of the most beautiful compositions in dance repertoire. And that is no accident, because he invited Nattuvanars, dancers, to compose, to be residents in his court under his patronage and compose. The Varnams and the Swarajatis of what we today call the Tanjavur quartet of Ponnaya Pillai, Chinnaya Pillai, Vadivel and Shivanandam, they were all composers in his court at some point in time. Later on they went to Mysore, they went to Etepuram, etc. But they were all nurtured and nourished by Swati TIRUNAL. And their output is because of Swati TIRUNAL's patronage. That is why the Varnams and Thillanas, etc. of Ponnaya Pillai, Vadivelu was supposed to be an exceptional violinist. It is around this time that the violin started coming into Carnatic music. Some people credit Vadivelu as it is around the same time as Ambi Dikshidhar. Baluswami Dikshidhar, of violin coming into as a mainstay in Carnatic music accompaniment at that time. 1850s and the time. Vadivelu was supposed to be an exceptional dancer and a Nattuvanar. He was actually called Nattuvan Vadivelu. He had that title, and Swati TIRUNAL had presented him with an ivory violin because he was so good at the violin. So his dance compositions, of which I have not studied his dance compositions much at all, but there is so much literature out there which says that the dance compositions of Swati TIRUNAL are exceptional. But his grasp of the dance idiom and the poetics and the romanticism of it, one can see in his Padavarnas, one can see in his Javali, and his grasp of the Nritta. This is also around the time when the Tillana is being born in Carnatic music. Before the 1800s, there is no Tillana. There is no Jati within the composition. So this is also a very, very beautiful period of innovation. Swati TIRUNAL was an innovator because he brought these things into the gamut of Carnatic music composition. I shall sing a very beautiful composition of his in and his Kathakali Padams. Swati TIRUNAL's Kathakali Padams are also huge. They number in hundreds, which some of which are still being performed in that tradition, in the Kathakali tradition, Kathakali Padam, and that set the trend for the genre itself. So there have been later composers of Padams. The Padam that we talk about of Swati TIRUNAL is very different from the Padam of Kshetrajna. For Kshetrajna, it was a vehicle for, like in a kriti of surrender and submission. For Swati TIRUNAL, it was a vehicle for dance. So we will see that how, I know only 2 or 3 padams, I have to learn a few more. But the scope for Abhinaya and the scope for lyricism in those padams are very, very beautiful. But first I will sing you how the Nritta element, he was very strong. And we can also say, because there is no evidence of Tillana before his time, it would be logical to say that he was the so-called, within inverted commas, the inventor of the Tillana for Carnatic music. And later on, of course, Ponnaya Pillai, Chinnaya Pillai, they composed a lot of Tillanas, which I'm sure you might be aware of. So this Tillana itself has come to Swati TIRUNAL's court from the court of Wajid Ali Shah. Right? Around the 1750s is when the Tarana in the north got a very, very big boost in the courts of Wajid Ali Shah, and later on Bahadur Shah Zafar. These are the Mughal kings in central India around that time. And because Swati TIRUNAL imported these musicians, the music also came with them, and probably he was inspired, he liked the Tarana form as a genre, and he felt like composing in Sanskrit in that. In fact, his Geeta Dhuniki, which all of you are familiar, in the Raga Dhanashri, is in very good Hindi. So it is a Hindustani composition to begin with. It's almost like a Tarana, but with more Sahitya. Also in a composition like, you can see his mastery of Tala. Again, here also I'm assuming that the met was very similar to what we are singing in a composition like in the Riti Gaude composition. Paripalayamam, Paripalayamam, Sri Padmanabha Murare, Paripalayamam, Sri Padmanabha Murare, Paripalayamam, Sri Padmanabha Murare, Paripalayamam, Sri Padmanabha Murare, Paripalayamam. Sharanagata Bharanotsuka, Sharanagata Bharanotsuka, Sharanagata Bharanotsuka, Sharanagata Bharanotsuka, Sharada Soma Samana Virinchi Sureshwara Sevya Paripa. So the core ve mare Tadhim, 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 Tata. Right? Sharada Soma Samana Virinchi Sureshwara Sevya Paripalayamam. Including a very, very typical dance tirmanam. You can imagine that a dancer steps to this. Charada Soma Samana Virinchi Sureshwara Sevya Paripalayamam. This compositional method, or rather element, he extends to the charanas. Tamarasayata lochana charutano. Ta, tadim, ta, tadim, ta, tadim, dim, tadim, ta. Right? तामरसायतलोचन चारुतनु धरणीधर धरवन धाम विराजित दारुण तनुभव गण विपिन दगन परिपालयम. Right? So the Madhyama Kala Sahitya is like every charanam will have a little climax in the higher tempo. Neelaganopama sundara deha ruche Nikilamara Bhayakara Shaila Sutadava Sannuta Shamaya Mama Sakala Gadamiga Paripalayama. So you can find that lilt of the rhythmic cadence. Ta 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 takita tadimi takita tadimi pa di pa. Right? These are all aspects of a composition which are a little new. Like again, there is always the caveat that we don't know who tuned this. Right? But the Sahityam, Amaip and meter suggests that it has a certain rhythmic feel to it. Right? It is not sung in a what is called melismatic. Melismatic na continuous or Dikshitaroda Sahityam line mari. It's not, the raga is not pulled through, but raga is punctuated through rhythm. I can sing this as Swara Kalpana. It has that character, rhythmic character. In another composition, when how many of you have heard the composition Gopalaka Pahima Manisham? Adile Made Marita. The first time Jati is being inserted into a composition. Gopalaka Pahima Anisham. Gopalaka Pahima Anisham. Radhamayi Gopalaka Pahima Anisham. Tava pada Radhamayi Gopalaka. This is called Yati. Rathamayi, Pada Rathamayi, Tava Pada Rathamayi. Dikshtar also is a master of this. He has used it in so many compositions. But this is not an element of music. This is an element of the prosody, poetics. Nama Tamil le idukku kondu kootalnu or similar prosodic device is there. Right? You are familiar with that. Tamil literature le madirku, Sanskrit literature le madirku. Romba. So on the device use pannaradhukku, he proves that he was a master of Sanskrit. And so illa prasa, muhana, atiprasa, yati, இந்த மாதிரி elements எல்லாம் part of prosody. அதெல்லாம் அவர் இதில் யூஸ் பண்றார். Papa Vimochana Pavidaradhana Tapada Pallava Papa Vimochana Pavidaradhana Tapada Pallava Tana Taritam Dari Udanit Dittilana Tananam Tanatari Ditlam Kirtaka Jam Jam Ditlam Kirtaka Jam Jam Ditlam Kirtaka Jam Jam Gopalaka Paima. So on the Tishram Adukulle incorporate all elements of dance. Tana tari tam dari udhanita dhittilana. Udhani in the sollellame gudi dance vocabulary da. Tana tari tam dari udhanita dhittilana tananam tanatari dhitlam kirtaka jam jam dhitlam kirtaka jam jam dhitlam kirtaka jam jam Gopalaka Paima Anisham. Sadhukatita mridasana sarosha bhitama trivikshita sadhukatita mridasana sarosha bhitama trivikshita bhudhara jalanidhi mukha bhuvida bhuvana jala lalita mukhambuja tanatari tamdari udanita dittilana tananam tanatari ditlam kirtaka jam jam ditlam kirtaka jam jam ditlam kirtaka jam jam Gopalaka Pa. So moon charanamam இந்த மத்தியம கால ரொம்ப விறுவிறுப்பா. சாரச பவ மதஹர சதீர்த்திய தீன பூசுரார்பித Sarasa bhava madharasa tityadi bhusurarpi pararahita dhanashayanidu patagaraja karara patagaraja rata kamala varatana tari. Progress is like that. Sarasa rasa suvachana sarojanabha lokanayaka bhuri karuna tanujita manasija bhujagaraja shayana murashasana gopalaka pahimam anisham. I'm not singing them very well because to sing and speak is very, very tough ask. Romma kashtam. And I don't have a script which I'm following to speak. So my mind is so fragmented. Idum padno, adum padno. Romba tough. Parvale, but it's okay. So the idea of tala intensive and laya intensive compositions is also something which we can see in a few of his compositions. The influence of him as a dance composer. See, the mind of the composer is not separate, it's not divided like this is dance composition, this is music composition, this is poetics. Illa oru brain da, oru mind da. So there are going to be influences of one genre on the other. That is very clearly seen here. Ragam. Vachaspati. So Vachaspati evlo alagana ragam. Pahi jaga janani Paratpara Parameswara Kanta Judumi Pahi jaga janani. These are the three pillars of Vachaspati that we have. We don't have time to sing the composition, but very, very beautiful kriti. I learnt it from my mother when I was a child of 10 or 11. So it's very precious to me, but we will sing that at some other time. But in the Melakarta Ragasla kudi nariya irukku. அவர் எல்லாத்துக்கும் ராகம் எழுதி வச்சிட்டார். Okay, don't think that people who set to whatever, collected his fragments and put it together were random. No, the ragas were written, talas were given in the manuscripts. There is a lot of history with respect to the manuscripts. In the last 30, 40 years, a lot of research has gone into it. Because the Samsthana of the Royal Palace has commissioned a lot of research into Swati TIRUNAL. And it has, the journey of the researchers also is very interesting, as to how they are putting together things and coming out with more believable and historically, validated facts. So in this Vachaspati, because the raga and this composition is dear to me, I set a Hindustani bandish, which I will sing now. The treatment of Vachaspati in the north is slightly different. Saga ma pa pa ni sa ni da ma pa ba ga ri ni sa ri sa saga ma 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 ga saga ma ga ri. This Amsha it borrows from Marubihal. Saga ma pa ga ma 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 ga ma pa da ni da pa pa da ni da ma pa ni da ma pa ga ri ni sa sa ni da pa da ni da ma pa sa ma sa ma pa ga ma pa da ni sa da ni da pa sa ni da pa ma ga ga ma pa da ni sa ga ri ni ri sa ga ma ga ri ni da pa ma sa ga da ni ga ma ga ri sa ni da pa da ni pa ma ga sa ni da pa ma ga ri ni ri sa ga ma da pa ni da pa da ni da pa da ma pa ga ma ga ri sa ni sa. This raga was adopted into Hindustani for the first time by Bade Ghulam Ali Khan Sahib. Lot of the male ragas and outdoor ragas in Hindustani have come about recently. Anabhogi, Hamsadwani, idillam Carnatic music in the north ku ponadu. Many ragas like Vachaspati, Simendra Madhyamam, Sampurna ragas, which were not there in traditional Hindustani raga repertoire, they have very beautifully borrowed it. Of course, when you borrow from one system to the other, there is, the aesthetics are remain the same. Saga ma pa ga pa ma ga ri ga ri sa ri da ni sa ri ga ga. All those will change, right? So idhula oru drut bandish. Bansi wale ne man moh liya. The flute player bansi wale ne man moh liya. Meethi boli bole, madhur tanan gaave, dar dar umang bharave. These are the lyrics of Swati TIRUNAL. Bansi wale ne man moh liya. This flute player has mohified my mind, has taken over. Meethi boli bole, sweet talk, madhura tanan gave. We have always seen Krishna as playing the flute. For the first time, Swati TIRUNAL is imagining him as singing. Madhura tanan gave. He's singing madhur tan. Tan means in the elaboration. Dar dar umang bharave. Umang means josh, joy, delight. Dar dar umang bharave. அவரோட ஃப்ளூட் கேட்டு மயங்கி போயிடுறேன். அந்த அவரோட பாடல் கேட்டு avlo joy, avlo delight. The antara is Savaro Ranga Mohini, Ranga Sumirana Tanaki Bhulave. Savaro is Krishna himself. Savariya, Savaro. Ranga, again color of Krishna. Color of Krishna. Mohini. Mohini na anything which makes you lose your mind. Moha. Mohini. Ranga Sumirana. When I think of that color, Ranga Sumirana. Sumirana means Smaranam Pandrathu. Sumirana. Tanaki Bhulavi. I forget my bodily existence. Padumanava Prabhu Nisadina Gopiya Rijhave Bansi Wale ne Manamohaliya. That is Padumanava Prabhu Nisadina. Every day as he plays, he delights the gopis. Bansi Wale ne Manamohaliya. Bansi Wale ne Manamohaliya. Give तीन ताल बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया, बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया, बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया, बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया. मीठी बोली बोले मधुर तानन गावे, दर दर उमंग भरावे, बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया. मीठी बोली बोले मधुर तानन गावे, बर बर उमंग भरावे, बंसी वाले ने मान. The man da sam. बंसी वाले ने मान मोह ली, बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया. मीठी बोली बोले मधुर तानन गावे, बर बर उमंग भरावे, बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया. The little complex, inspired by how Bade Gulam will sing. बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया, बंसी वाले मान मोह लिया, बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया, बंसी वाले ने, बंसी वाले ने मन मोह लिया, बंसी वाले ने, बंसी वाले ने मन, बंसी वाले ने मन मोह लिया, बंसी वाले ने मन. So, நல்ல எனர்ஜியா இந்த பன்சி வாலனே மனமோகலியா. सावरो रंग मोहिनी, रंगा सुमिरान तन की भुलावे, पदुमनाभ प्रभु निसादिन गोपियां रिझावे, बंसी वाले ने मान. सावरो रंग मोहिनी, रंग सुमिरान तन की भुलावे, पदुमनाभ पदुमनाभ प्रभु निसादिन गोपियां रिझावे, बंसी वाले ने मान मोह लिया. There are a lot of kritis, Navaratri kritis, and of course the very two popular Mamavasadas. I call them the pair of Mamavasadas. One in Natakurji and one in Kannada. Mamavasada, Mamavasada janani Mavasada janani mahisha surasudani amba Mamavasada Mama Sada Janani Mahishasura Sudani Ambama Mavasada Janani Mahishasura Sudani Amba Mavasada Janani Mahishasura Sudani Amba Mavasada Janani Mamavasada Varade Mahishasura Sudani Amba Mamavasada Varade Mahishasura Sudani Amba Mamavasada Varade. He was also a master of Swarakshara. So many of his compositions, you will find, all of you know the idea of the Swarakshara, yeah? Mama Sada Varade. That should have been ideal for Sangati. But we don't sing it. Has anybody heard that Sangati sung by anybody? Ma Swaraksharam. Mama Sada Varade. நான் சிலப்பு பாடுவேன், எனக்கு அப்படி அந்த சங்கதி பாடம் இல்லை. But it is pointed out by many scholars that he was a master of Swarakshara. Mamavasada Varade Mamavasada Varade Mahishasura Sudani Amba Mamava Sada Varade Sada 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 Varade. Anyway, so the Sada Varade, you can enhance, embellish it with the Swarakshara. We don't have time to go through maybe his Navaratri Kritis. We can have a separate session for that, because very simple. Unlike the Kamalamba Navavarnas or Navagraha Kritis of Dikshitar, these are very, of course the charanas are very intense in terms of the Sahitya length. But definitely easier than the Kamalamba Navavarnas are very, very challenging. Anyway, I mentioned about his padams. Na 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 Kurinji. Ta na 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 Tadaran na 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 Tadana na 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 Tadana na 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 Aliveni yendu chaivu hanta jnanini mani aliveni yendu chaivu hanta jnanini mani aliveni yendu chaivu Hanta jnanini mani aliveni yendu chaivu Nalina miri Sri Padmanabhaniha Vanillallo Aliveni Yendu Cheivu Indu Nishgayam. Let me check the words. Indu Nishgayam. This is in Malayalam. Anybody knows? I know the next word, but this is slipping my mind. Enna? Nishgayum. Indindiradi Ravum Manda Marutanum Chaye Charu Malaya Jale Panam Kunta Jati Sumangalum Komalagi Saki Sundaran Varanyal Loga Sundaran Varanyal Triloga Sundaran Varanyal Aye Solga Kimme Prajwa Prayojanam Loga Sundaran Varanyal Chaye Solga Kimme Prayojanam Aliveni Yendu Jaivu Antagnyanini Mani Aliveni Yendu Jaivu Hanta Jnanini Mani. Very beautiful padams of his. The Dhanashri again was a raga introduced by him. Nobody else seems to have composed in that raga after him also. In fact, Vishveshwara Darshanakara is originally, the indication is Dhanashri in the book. It's not Sindhu Bhairavi. Maybe it was a later, maybe Alatur brothers or somebody set it in. Of course, later, anything which MS sings becomes the norm. She also sang Vishveshwara Darshanakara. Adala ungalku ketadu da, so I will not repeat those. I hope we have been able to cover. There is lot of material that I have in terms of very intriguing and fascinating history. You know, that is something which I will encourage you. Iniki ta internet irukke. We don't have to go to any libraries. All of it is available to us. If we are interested to know, then the knowledge presents itself. So I will encourage all of you to go and read. Just for the joy of it. To know what is the ecosystem, where are these compositions coming, where they are coming from. What is it that leads Swati TIRUNAL to compose in such a way? After his time, how it has traveled to us. Who are the people? What is the agencies through which they become so beautiful? And today, in fact, once the Maharani had complained that why are Swati TIRUNAL compositions? This 40 years back, it is there as a question which he posed to the Kerala government. Why is it that Swati TIRUNAL compositions are not heard outside Kerala? You know, the politics of language, the politics of statehood are all at play. We cannot deny. Look at the politics of the current scenario. The politics of even spiritualism is not allowed. Correct? If I want to have a ratham and if I want to, police puts a stop to it. Beautiful. That is the state we live in. What I am saying, is that the politics of region, politics of times, all of them have an impact on the music that is created and propagated. There is no doubt about it. It is not existing in some vacuum, in some isolated place. It is impacted by all. So to know about how a composition travels to us and how much joy it gives us, if you read, I think you'll cherish the compositions much more. So Innik, of course, some of those barriers of language have broken. And today it doesn't hold, nobody can ever tell that Swati TIRUNAL Kritis are not. That is why Maharani made it compulsory. She started organizing during Navaratri concerts at the palace. And each of the singers, I have also gone there once. Each of the singers is prescribed a Navaratri Kriti of that day to be sung. It has to be sung with Alapana and Tanam. So, அந்த மாதிரி tradition, and the propagate பண்றதுக்கு எப்படி the royal family has also been very active. Because it is their legacy which they want to see participated in by the rest of the world. So with those words, I come to a finish to this presentation. If there are some questions, I can take them. But like this is not a musicological subject. It's a subject of historical research primarily. You know, and the progress of music through the ages. Progress of music through the ages, oralavukku enak insights irukku. Because I have read, but historical facts, I am not a historian, so I don't know much. Cholungo.
It's not a question. It was just that you mentioned Suma Sayaka, Karnataka copy. In the last swaram, it's actually a varnam. In the last swaram, brilliantly they have introduced Ragamalika.
Yes. Nobody, no one has done that. And it is very fascinating to know that Suma Sayaka corresponding there is a Telugu varnam of the same met. Similarly, for Sava Marusha of Kamas, there is Telugu also. So, there is a mention that many times Swati TIRUNAL used to compose and then give it to Ponnaya Pillai or Chinnaya Pillai to refine the composition. It is written in the records that it was. So, even during his time, it was not as if he came up with the whole thing himself. So, Suma Sayaka Cholumbo and the last Ragamalika, maybe one of the court composers felt that the Raja likes Ragamalikas because he has composed a lot of Ragamalikas. Let me make him happy by making it into a Ragamal. These are all possibilities. Correct? Amma. But very beautiful observation.
Observation about you said jatis incorporated or in as jati or as a prasam in a
Yes.
Uthukadu who is this thing he has
Done it. In Kalinga Narthanamilla, nariya examples irukku.
and Bhagavata Mela
Bhagavata
is
Mela.
also replete with all those
Yes.
and
But Carnatic music Kriti kulla adu
music ulla kriti ulla ivar Uthukadu pannirukkaru.
Uthukadu innum still not Carnatic music. It's a slightly scholarly discourse of what makes it is still devotional. It comes into the rubric, even a Tirupavai or a Tirupugal, though we sing in Carnatic, it is essentially devotional. It's not like a kriti or a stage performing, it's not art music, so to speak. No, I'm just telling you there are going to be different points of view on this. But the idea that Uthukad was only being sung in Bhajana Sampradaya and not in Kacheris. No, I'm not. This is a fact, historical facts already. Now, I'm not expressing an opinion here. It was not being sung. A Tirupugal was not being sung. Something which was composed in the 14th century was not being sung in courts and all that. It was incorporated only around 1890. So, even Tevarams, who was singing it on stages? Nobody was. Even after stage
Can you
came.
take it up off the main program?
Physically Tyagaraja or this thing they have not been, but the court musicians have travelled.
Yes.
Govinda
Marar has travelled. He was in the court of
அதே மாதிரி தஞ்சை நால்வர் ideas have travelled.
Ideas will always travel.
Varnametals have travelled. So it may not be exactly a coincidence that a certain
No, I preface that by saying that he was following the unique paddhati of Shesha Ingar, Margadarshi Shesha Ingar. I find that the kritis today, the way we sing it, are in a very widely accepted form, structure.
many of these compositions, தியாகராஜருடைய
ஆமா.
எடுப்பு, இவருடைய எடுப்பு ஒரே.
Similar இருக்கு. ஆமாமா.
So அந்த வர்ணமெட்டுன்னு அப்படியே
That is what leads me to believe that they are all modern reinventions.
not that people have been travelling, so it need not be in order.
No, because there is evidence, there is historical evidence that he followed the unique paddhati of Margadarshi Shesha Iyengar. I am saying that. I am not postulating any theory here. I am not diminishing anybody's value. I am just saying that because it is noted that he was a follower of that, it doesn't seem to be different from what we are used to now. அதான் சொல்கிறேன் தவிர ஐ எம் நாட் சேயிங் இட் வாஸ் ஒரிஜினல் ஆர் நியூ ஆர் ஒத்தென்டிக் ஆர் நாட் ஒரிஜினல் ஆர் நாட் நியூ ஆர் நாட் ஒத்தென்டிக். ஐ எம் டெல்லிங் யூ தட் வே வி ஆர் ஹியரிங் த பிகாஸ் ஐ டோன்ட் ஹாவ் த ஸ்காலர்ஷிப் டு கோ பேக் அண்ட் பாஸ்டுலேட் வாட் ஹேப்பன் 200 years back. From the facts which are recorded in the register of the royal, it is written that he followed the unique compositional paddhati of Margadarshi Shesha Iyengar. Now, but the compositions which we are encountering today are very much within what we are used to hearing. That is why I will, and based on other facts, like I said, Ramavarma himself says that the tunes are lost. He uses the words in an interview that the tunes of Swati TIRUNAL's composition are lost. When the prince himself is saying that, when the scion of that royal family himself is saying that, I will take it.
Sir, but recently, see, Ajit Namburi published a
Ajit Nambudri, I've been through that book. That is from fragments from that 1907 book. 1907 book. But like I say, authentic illa. I will tell you why. Because there is 100 years separating Swati TIRUNAL and that book. So on the 100 years, எப்படி authentic, எப்படி அந்த lines of transmission வந்தது தான் பெரிய question mark. This book, Balamritam, which is the basis was Swati Mudra. Swati Mudra is Ajit Nambudri's book. It has 122 compositions in the same mette as written in the 1927 book. That is only the evidence. That it was, that Balamritam itself, where is the validity or a proof that they were the authentic Swati TIRUNAL compositions is still lacking. There is a missing link there. If tomorrow some scholar or historian is able to pull up and substantiate this, I will be the first to accept. But yes, the Swati Mudra book and the 122 compositions with the notation are based on the 1927 book and not on, there is no evidence of the 100 years in between how it travelled. Still there is a gap of about 80 years. That is, if somebody wants to throw more light on it, I'll be more than willing to accept that.
the influence தீக்ஷரோட சிஷ்ய கணங்களால் தஞ்சைனால வந்திருக்காங்க. அப்ப அந்த ஆனந்த நடன பிரகாசம் அந்த கேதாரும் இவரோட பரமானந்தனால அதிலே ஒரு சிமிலாரிட்டி.
அதெல்லாம் that's a different musicological exercise. What I am saying is that for Muthuswami Dikshidhar and Tyagaraja, the Shishyam Paramparas ensured that some semblance of the original mette is preserved. Change will happen, but some semblance that this was very close, what we sing today is very close to how it was being sung by Tyagaraja. But in Swati TIRUNAL's case, because he didn't have a single Shishya is what is written. He didn't have a, so அந்த Shishya Parampara lineage இருக்காதனால நம்மளுக்கு அந்த tunes வந்து மற்ற இடத்துலேருந்து ஃப்ராக்மெண்ட்ஸாக தான் கலெக்ட் பண்ணியிருக்கா. Even my guru said, KSN sir said, that they collected fragments of some notations of somebody who has heard it, whose tata has taught them and all that. But no formal lines of the parampara.
ஒரு பாடு
சொல்லுங்க.
இங்க கதகளி பதம் சொன்னல்லையா? கதகளி பதம் சொல்லி வாக்கு சொன்னல்லிங்க.
கதகளி பதம்.
கதகளி பதம் and this padam is entirely different.
I know it is different, but இதேம் செல்லதெல்லாம் அதுல பண்றா இல்லையா?
கதகளி பதம் is entirely different, text is entirely like
Okay.
Duryodhanam. That is written by Iraiman Thambi Unnaivaram like.
Iraiman Thambi also is a contemporary of Swati TIRUNAL.
And this is padam for Mohiniyattam, mainly for Mohiniyattam. These padams.
Padams of Swati TIRUNAL. Yeah, yeah. In fact, he was a big supporter and patron of Mohiniyattam, Swati TIRUNAL. Thank you for the correction or whatever clarification.
So,
Yeah.
நீங்கள் சொன்ன மாதிரி விஸ்வேஸ்வர தர்ஷன் comes under Drupad. So can we have a glimpse of?
I don't know. I have to sit and work at it because I have also learnt the Sindhu Bhairavi thing. The 4 sections are what very clearly that of Drupad. Sthai, Sanchara, Antara, Abhog. These are the 4 sections of the Drupad composition. அதே மாதிரி தான் இதில் நம்ம 3 சரணம்னு போடுறோம். Correct? But the conception, if it is categorized as a Hindustani Drupad composition, it would have adhered to this sectional division of Sthai, Sanchara, Sthai, Sanchara, Antara, Abhog. In the 4 sections, and the format la irukkudu Sahityathila. So that is why. And like I said, it was originally in Dhanashri, so we don't know. Adu eppadi adu Drupada paadradna, I am not a Drupadiya, so I don't know to sing like that. Of course, I can sing a little bit, but it won't hold water. I have made a small humble attempt at setting some of his compositions as a bandish. And again, there also I have precedence. So if I am doing something wrong, you will have to blame them. You will have to put the blame on Jitendra Abhishek ji or Pandit Jasraj. I am in very safe company there. If you want to blame anybody, blame them. Recently, even Kaushiki had, I heard a rendition of hers of a Swati TIRUNAL composition that she sang. But of course, her father has done quite a few. So, anyway, thank you so much.
so thank you for this lovely exploration of the Swati TIRUNAL Kritis and a detailed history of his. That was very lovely, Dr. Parashuram.
Thank you so much. Like I said, I am not an expert at all. So I will welcome any corrections, any changes that I have to make. I am just looking at the kritis from the point of view of a very delighted musician and some basis in having done some research into literature. அதுதான் என்னோட பேசிஸ். அல்ட்டா இதுக்குள்ளே இறங்கினா இதுக்கே ஒரு ஜென்மம் வேணும். எப்போ பாடுறது?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.